only Twitter cares about your clips. Literally no good player cares. Literally not a single tier 1 player cares about your clips. Like literally no one. Buy Buckies and judges and sit in corners, like abuse the game. She's the most talented player I've ever seen, I think. Half the hours we spend scrimming, we spend VOD reviewing almost. We spend like at least 2 hours a day VOD reviewing. If there's a team that will make it through challengers, it's us.
Yeah, I'm here with Effys today, the head coach of version 1. I guess it's not version X anymore. It's just you are the only version 1
Yeah,
team at
it's
this
only
point.
version 1 now. Yeah, there's no X or GC or whatever after purple, whatever.
Perfect. Well, you were a former player for the original version 1, and now you're the head coach of the current version 1, which is the Game Changers team. If anybody has not followed the Game Changers team, you probably have still heard of this version 1 team because you guys have been absolutely stomping in North America. With the likes of Mel and Florescent, Lexus, Sarah, and Noya. That's correct?
Yeah, that's our lineup. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, let's kind of hold off on the Game Changer stuff for a second because I want to just get a little bit of your background. Obviously, you used to play a bit of CS, but I'm not a huge CS follower. I was following Dota at that point, so that was my game of choice, my Valve addiction. But let's talk about the kind of early days of Valorant, because I remember you were part of the version 1 team. You guys went to kind of an unexpected land, I think, for a lot of people. Like nobody was really kind of picking you guys as one of the
even
top
for
teams.
Ourselves, I think it was quite unexpected. I agree.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your early days of Valorant, and I believe you played for Gen G before that one for a little bit. So just talk to me a little bit about early Valorant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I transitioned from CS. I mean, CS, like you said, I played a lot of CS, but I never really like committed to CS. I always like had a job or went to school. It was never like a full-time thing. I didn't have any plans for Valorant when it came out as well. It's just like it was like a good turn of luck, I guess, because like COVID came at the same time. So I'm a software engineer background. Like my real quote unquote job was software engineer, and when COVID came, like everything was like shut down. So I had and Valorant came at the same time. So like I had like 13 hours a day to just do nothing, and then Valorant came out at the same time. I was like okay at CS. I wasn't like a pro or anything. I was like semi-pro most of my career. I had some good runs, but never like lived off it. And I just started grinding Valorant with like the people from like other friends from CS, like Player One, Sabrosa, GMD, Michael, Win, and like all the French guys that I used to play CS with. We all grinded Valorant at the same time, and we like picked up the game pretty quickly, I think. And I think we won like the first real Valorant tournament. Was like a 25K tournament hosted by T1. We won that, which was pretty expected because we beat teams like what was to be TSM, what was to be like C9, like a lot of good teams, what was to be T1, and like all these huge players and huge shining, and we just came out of nowhere, and we got signed to Gen G right after. I had like mixed results on Gen G. We had some good tournaments, but like I think our roster wasn't like that skilled or that talented. Like we weren't talented enough to be like a top American team consistently. They decided to make roster changes, and I was the first one gone. I'm still not too sure why. I don't know if it's my age or like I didn't feel like I was playing bad or anything. It just like I agreed that changes were to be made. I just wasn't sure why it was me. But so I had like a 6 month on Gen G where I played we won another tournament later, but overall like it was like third place, fifth place, like stuff like that. And then I had a stint with NRG where I subbed in for First Strike, which was like early day tournaments as well. Right. I was replacing, I think they picked up someone from CS. It was like Exceed, I think, and it didn't work out with him. So they knew I was available. They knew I had experience at the like top tier Valorant, and they were mostly guys transitioning from CS, so they figured like someone with like high experience in Valorant could help. So I just subbed in with them for like 2 months. It was more of like a sub in than a trial, and I always saw it as a sub more than a trial. It was cool though because I got to work with Daps and Chet. Their relationship between them was kind of funny, but like overall, these are still like very experienced players. Like you have Chet, who's obviously like probably the most known and probably one of the best coach in Valorant among like Mimi and MCE, like the most like rated coach, if I may. So it was great to like work with him. See, like even if it was like for a long time, I still picked up like I liked his approach. He was like very calm guy, like it wasn't raging. It was like pretty chill. Like he always brought stuff to practice, so I kind of like working with him. But yeah, that was like 2 months, and after that, they kind of released me. They picked up Shanks, and then I was like floating around, like playing rank, and just like I was just waiting for the next opportunity. Back then, Valorant was like much more alive. Well, orgs were much more invested back then than they are now. Like it was
Right.
still pre-franchising, so like there was a lot of orgs. And player one, who was like a player with me on Genji, who also got released later, approached me, said that like he was currently playing with Zelsis, Vanity, and like Penny, and they were looking for like a support player, which is what I think I do best in Valorant. And they just approached me, he's like, "Yo, you want to come trial with us? Like we have an org lined up. Like it's a pretty new roster. They're like everybody's brand new to Valorant. They just switched, but I think they're pretty good." And I just went in, played one day, and it just clicked. Like I knew Zelsis from CS. I went to China with him. We played a tournament on different teams, but we still were in China together. We bugged a few times together. Like we were not buddies, but we knew each other,
Mhm.
and we got along pretty well. And like the team, as soon as I trialed with the team, I was like, okay, well, we're actually quite good. Like it was funny because player one and I were like the most experienced Valorant players. So
Mhm.
we knew Valorant more than like the other three did, which Penny's, Vanity, and Zelsis. But they clearly were the better TAC FPS players. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
they all of them played Pro League and CS. Vanity was like on Chaos, which was like a really good upcoming team. Celsius won C9. So like they were
Right.
really good at like TAC FPS basics. They just needed people to like help them understand Valorant. And I think I kind of provided that with them. Like I kind of helped them with that. And they in return they helped me like get my TAC FPS fundamentals like much higher than what they were before.
Mhm.
And like that mix up made it so that the team clicked very well and we kind of skyrocketed like from each attempt. Because I don't remember how the system worked back then, but it was like qualifier into qualifier into
Right.
qualifier into
Yeah.
qualifier
Just
into
lots
like,
of open calls.
yeah, until you
Yeah.
make it somewhere. And I think each time we made it further, like FaZe was really hard to beat back then, with like Baby Bay and Corey, and like they had like a really stacked team, and we always got this close. But I remember like one game we just beat them, and like at this point it like clicked, and we just started rolling through everybody except Sentinels, and yeah, I made it to like Reykjavik after, and then yeah, that's probably like not my peak form, but that was like when I probably just like stepped onto the scene on a much bigger level, I think.
Right. Right. Kind of a tangential question, but I remember. I think it was at the end of your time on version one. I feel like I remember you putting out some sort of tweet about where you were like really thankful to your teammates for giving you a shot, even though you felt like you weren't necessarily like mechanically at the level that you thought you needed to like be playing tier one, but like you felt like you could bring a lot of other qualities to the team. I
Yeah.
can't exactly remember the wording of it. Um, but it seems like you kind of always felt like maybe you were bringing something outside of like what was traditionally wanted from players to teams, and that was like kind of your niche on the team. Do you still kind of feel it? That was maybe your path. You said you were kind of like a supportive player at the
Yeah,
time.
I've always been a supportive player. I think I don't know if like, because I think Valorant isn't that hard of a game mechanically. Like I
Mhm.
feel like mechanics at Valorant aren't that big of a deal, and that's why I was probably better at this game than I was at CS. Because like in CS, if you can't shoot and your movement's bad, then it's like you kind of end up like Blade or like someone like that who goes like -30 every series, and like people flame you, and then you just get end up getting cut. Sorry, but in
Mhm.
Valorant, I feel like it matters less. Like in Valorant, like everybody can shoot straight. It's not like it's hard to shoot people in Valorant. It's actually pretty easy. I was always more supportive in nature, and like Valorant suits that well. Like there's a lot of like support agents that only are meant for supporting, like the breaches, the Sovas, the skies, and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I felt like I found my niche in Valorant pretty early as a support player, and I kind of knew after V1 that it was going to be hard for me to get picked up because I wasn't like a flashy player, like you said, or anything like that. I was thankful because players like Vanity and Zelsis saw, and Penny as well, and like Whippy and like other the people I grinded with saw value in me. Where I wasn't like a flashy player. I wasn't like hitting crazy shots or like dropping 30s every map, but I always brought energy to a team. Like
Mhm.
I have like another background in esports. I worked like a normal 9 to 5 job for like a long time. I went through school. I got like half a master's degree. Like I have more of a like traditional background,
Mhm.
And I think because of that, I'm a bit more professional than what people are used to in like
In esports
esports.
for sure.
Yeah. So like
More socialized as well,
yeah,
probably.
maybe a little bit. So like I come into practice, I have no off days. Like there's never a day where I'm in practice and I don't have full energy. Like
Mhm.
there's never. I don't think I remember if I can't play, I just won't play because I'm sick. But otherwise, if in the server, if I'm here, I'm here. Like I'm not like sleepy. I'm not like, oh, I don't want to do it today. I'm like emo. No, no. I'm always like dialed in and all in.
Mhm.
So I think that they appreciated that. And even like I learned through my career that like even if I have bad games, my role in the team is to be vocal and be like not a hype person. I'm not necessarily hyped. Like I'm not necessarily super energetic. I'm not yelling like Celsius. I'm not screaming. I'm not like getting people pumped up. But I'm very consistent in the energy I bring.
Mhm.
And I think that was something that like is extremely like underrated. And like as a coach, I started noticing that as well. Like people that have like consistent energy and are the same every day are so valuable. And I kind of
Right.
saw myself through that after like, okay, well maybe this is what I brought to a team.
Interesting. So, I guess kind of a follow-up question to that. Do you feel like maybe you would have had more shots to play now that the game has kind of evolved to understand that supportive players like are important? Because I feel like at the point that you maybe stepped away from playing, it was like, okay, who's going to be the next big jet? Who's going to be the next big chamber? Like people only cared about the duelists, and nowadays people are talking about the Ethans, the Sugetsus, the Alfiers, like the people on the kind of off roles that are having huge amount of impact and not even necessarily fragging out. Like in the case of, I mean, Ethan still does to some extent, but people are, gassing up his assist numbers and how often, like how good his flash timing is and that kind of stuff. Do you feel like maybe in today's Valorant you would find a little bit more sort of like appreciation for your skill set?
I think I would, like in the sense that you are right. People are like starting to move away from the thinking like only kills and stats matter. I do think that people are like seeing more value in the supportive player. Like when a player in my team's like Lexi gets a lot of like love from people just because of how good she is at supporting people. Like she doesn't like get like crazy stats line, but she still gets seen as like a very valuable player. So I think people have a good mindset for that. But overall, with the like state of the current Valorant tier 2 scene, I don't think I would get on like there's if you think about it, in challengers currently there's like only 4 signed orgs.
Right.
There's like M80, OR, M Moist, and I don't
May-
there's another one.
Maybe a TSM or phase
No,
eventually. Who knows?
yeah, something like that. But there's like another one. I know there's 4. Oxygen. There's Oxygen, yeah.
Yeah.
So like that's 20 players. And even if I believe that when I stopped playing, I was probably at my best. To be honest, the last year I played, I felt like I was much better than the year I went to Reykjavik. I feel like even then, with like the limited places and me being like older than like most of the people still playing, I don't think I think I would be good. I think I'd be like really good on the team if I like got back in shape and started like grinding again, ranked and like just getting my mechs like to a good level. I think I would be better now than I was before because all the coaching helped. But I just don't think there's room for like me in the scene, honestly. Like, because I
Hmm.
need, like I said, I'm a bit older. I'm 31. I just turned 31, and I can't. I mean, I can, but I don't think it makes sense for me to like go all in again and grind all these tier 3 tournaments being unpaid for like a year until
Right.
maybe I get noticed and maybe they will sign a 31-year-old Sova player. I feel like that's just delusional a little bit. And I think you're right in the sense that people would probably see more value in a player like me. But at the same time, the Valorant being what it is currently and the tier 2 scene being what it is, there's just so many good talented players that would be ahead of me that I don't think it would kind of make sense to like for a team to pick me up instead of them.
For sure. You're crushing a lot of these aging players' dreams right now saying that,
Well,
but it's
I
all
mean,
good.
I think I could. I honestly think
For
like
sure.
it's funny because like like I am Sydney just finished like in
Hmm.
CS. You're not a huge CS follower, you said, but it was a pretty big tournament in Sydney, and NA team made a deep run, Complexity made a very deep run, and FaZe ended up winning. And the MVP of the tournament is Rain, like,
Hmm.
and Rain is 29 years old. He's got a
Right.
kid. Like he stopped playing because he like had this paternity leave like a while back. Like he came back, and he's 29. Like he's way past what people would consider his prime, and he's still owning. And like the
Hmm.
more esports will go on, I think the more like the older people will get, like the older pros will be. It's
Yeah.
just gonna be natural, I think.
There's no like
Uh,
physical breakdown that would stop you from playing like there would
it's
be
not
in like
like you're
hockey or basketball or something like that. Yeah.
exactly, like you're not gonna get your knee destroyed by like someone hitting you, like
Yeah.
or something like that. Like it's your stretch if you work out. Like you can play till you're 35, in my opinion. I don't think, like I said, I think the last year I played, 2022, was my best year. Like I have no doubt that this is the year I was the better. I was more vocal. I was more assertive. I was more confident. My mechs were still good. Like I
Mhm.
think I only stopped playing because I needed a job. That's all. Like that's the only reason why I stopped playing.
Right. Makes sense. Okay. Well, let's talk about that job. So you were a player for V1. Obviously, the partnership stuff happens. The slots are very limited. You're kind of like floating around in free agent land. At what point were you approached to coach, or did you start approaching people like kind of offering your services as a coach? Like, how did the whole like version 1 Game Changers job come about for you?
It was actually them who approached me. Jake, who's the GM of version 1.
Mhm.
Shout out Jake. Hi. He's a really cool guy, and he always appreciated what I brought to the team. I think he knew what type of player I was. He knew that was like kind of the glue on the team, where like I was the one trying to fix stuff more than like breaking them.
Mhm.
And I think he valued that. And when he actually like released the whole V1 roster, like everybody went to G2, Celsius went to C9. I was kind of like you said, I was like left there, just like chilling.
Mhm.
And uh, they actually like bought all the like top upcoming GC players along with some vets and Mel and Lexi. And he needed a coach. And I was still signed to V1 back then. This was in December of last year, like almost
Mhm.
a year ago. And Jake is actually the one who approached me and was like, like we're building this like super team of GC, and like we know you're not getting any offers because obviously we would know if you were, and and we know you have a good mind for the game, and we know you have the personality to be a good coach. Would you like trying it? At
Interesting.
first, sorry.
That's just interesting.
Oh,
So
okay, okay.
I was curious whether you had any like hand in forming the team or whether they were just like, here's like the keys to the sports car, you know?
No, the keys to the sports car, definitely. Like a true, actually, our GM is the GM, our manager, sorry, is actually the one who built the team to get build the team. I
Mhm.
came in and the team was already formed. They're I think almost already signed. It was like a two-way trial. Like I was not sure I wanted to coach. I
Mhm.
wasn't sure I was wanting to coach a GC team. I never coached in my life. Um, and so it was like I said, a two-way trial. I was trialing it to see if I liked coaching. They were trialing me to see if they liked me as a coach.
Right.
So like there was a lot of unsure things happening. At the same time, I was also trialing to be a coach for G2. The Valorant, like not the GC team, but like the actual co-ed
So
team.
like Shazam
Shazam,
and
like everything. They
Penny
also
and
wanted
sure.
to bring me because I worked well with Imi, which was my previous coach on V1.
Right.
Like he's probably like my main source of inspiration as a coach. I know I talked about Chet earlier, but like I worked with Imi for so long. Like a lot of the stuff I bring is like what Amy taught me because he's the one coach I really had. Like he's my only
Mhm.
real coach that I had for like a long time. It's like everything I bring, like I get it from Amy. So I work well with him and like we have really complementary strength. But ultimately, like I had a talk with him. Like he's a friend. He's not only a coach, like he's a friend, and he's like talked me through my decision. He's like, well, here's the pros, here's the cons of everything. Like as a friend, he did that for me, and like I kind of like I didn't know where I was. I don't know if I wanted to play because I was still getting trials as players back then, but I knew it wasn't going to be like I wasn't going to be the first pick. So like yeah, there was a lot of in the air back then.
Mhm. Cool. Well, tell me what it was like for your first few practices then with this team. Like, I feel like, um, obviously, Valorant players are Valorant players, but having worked with both like a male team and also with a Game Changers team myself, I can tell that there's like some fairly significant differences between how they work and like how they interact with each other. At least that was my experience. So I'm kind of curious, like, what your experience was going from not only being a player on like an all male team to working with a GC roster, but not just a GC roster that has like a huge amount of talent and quite a bit of experience as well.
It was quite a transition to make. Like I said, I wasn't like sorry, I might expand on this a little bit.
That's
I
totally
was
fine.
I wasn't like a great coach coming in. I wasn't a coach at all. Like so, I didn't know where to start. I think the GC aspect to answer your question first is like I don't know. I've only coached this group of people, and I feel like this group of people just clicks.
Hmm.
Like I know, like in the server, we look dominant and stuff like that when we play GC, and like but this team is just so cohesive, and I mean it. Like, I know you probably hear that from like nobody wants to like talk shit about their team or whatever, and like, but I truly mean it. I've never seen a team with so little conflict. We've been together for a year, and they just don't fight ever. Like, it's basically just me getting mad at them sometimes, but it's honestly like they. I don't know if all the GC teams are like that. I can't speak for that because I've never coached all of them. From what I hear, not every team is like we are right now. I think there's still some clique, like some other teams that clicks and like stuff like that, where people like don't like each other and stuff. But this team, there is no clicks. Like, we have a break. People will play. Everybody will play rank with anyone. People will like talk to each other. Like, it's just very good vibes, and it's very not toxic.
Mhm.
And that for me was like probably 75% the reason why I chose this team over any other offer that I could have. Because I feel like if I wanted to coach, I would have gotten way more offers as a coach than a player. I think people kind of see my value as like a huge like nerd for Valorant
Mhm.
more than a player. And so I think if I wanted to coach other teams, I definitely could have like G2 like offered me as well. And I wanted to coach this team just because I was so tired of like toxic environment. I'm not a toxic person. I don't shit talk. I don't rage. I don't yell. I mean, I yell at my players sometimes when I get mad, but like, it's not like overly toxic where I like get
Right.
personal and like I want to see good Valorant. That's it. But like, I'm not overly toxic. I feel like, and just being part of like toxic rosters for years and years in CS and Valorant, just the constant fighting, the constant arguing, the constant ego rage, and like I just got so tired of it. And just being in this I mean, it's not a quiet environment. It's pretty loud. They're yelling all the time, but in a good way. Like, it's just calming. Like, not to have to worry about people raging at each other, and that's like 75% the reason why I chose this team. I was like, at least if it doesn't work out, at least I won't stress. Like, and I won't have like panic attacks over my teammates yelling at each other and like raging and threatening to leave the team after one
Right.
day of bad practice. Like, that was like so nice for me to see, and that's just so helpful. But at the same time, this come like, to go back to like GC versus like co-ed teams. This does come with a cost that like I think the GC players overall like way behind in terms of experience
Mhm.
as like other teams. So this coaching gig is very like, I wouldn't say like unrelated to like like I'd say like franchise or challengers like coaching gig where you'll have to like do different things than if you're coaching a GC team. But I mean, like, if you're coaching a GC team and you're trying to like make new meta refining define comps and like make like crazy new plays that have never been seen before, or like redefine the meta, like I said, you're doing it wrong in my opinion, because these things are not needed to like be good in GC. Like,
Mhm.
I feel like to be a good game changers team, you only need like good basic fundamentals of like Valorant, like old plays and like how to play around your teammates, good util usage, good communication and stuff like that. And like, so that's what I mean when I say like it's very different from like a normal franchising coaching gig where you would probably have to like spend hours looking at VODs, hours on the server thinking about how can I change the meta, how can like defeat this team, almost cheese them like
Mhm.
whatsoever. And like I see that a lot in GC. I see a lot of teams go for like cheese plays and like crazy executes off rip from the barrier and like stuff like that. And I just don't see this vision at all. I just don't believe it. So I think it's great coaching experience as far as like the coaching aspect of like like interpersonal relationship and how you approach a team and stuff like that. But it's definitely like on the Valorant side, it's very different from coaching like a top level team, I feel.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can just briefly share my experience that I had working with the Ascend Rising team
Oh,
in the
you worked with them,
last.
right? I saw
Yeah,
you worked with Ascent. I wasn't sure if you worked with. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So I'm an Ascend content creator, but
yeah.
I worked with their Rising team for the last split when we were trying to qualify for Brazil, and I had previously worked with some free agent like men's teams back like during the challenge team. I actually coached Roy's team for like 4 months,
Oh, yeah.
the kitten shelter.
I remember.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so I mean, just for me, the difference between working with that team and working with the Ascend team was crazy. Just in terms of the vibes, honestly. Like kind of what you were talking about. I feel like this is just a thing. Maybe it's not for every GC team, but it just seemed to me like the girls were so much more like supportive of each other.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
they like wanted the best for their teammates, like in all
100%.
cases, no
Yeah.
matter what. And it was just kind of nice from going from like
Yeah,
the
no, it's really cool. Yeah, yeah, I like that.
like
Yeah.
the crazy like, oh, I can't believe you fucked this up for me, dude, like why would you do that? And then you go to like the GC and it's like, oh, it's fine, it's cool, like it's almost like they needed to like bring out the fire, like the hunger to win a little bit more. It was like the main problem with them, as far as like, you know, like they needed to get angrier during the big game sometimes to some extent.
No, it makes sense. I think you're completely right, and I think we have a right balance now of that. Like, sometimes Mel will get a bit tilted, like C will get a bit angry at like something happening, but it's not gonna like like it's not gonna be like become this huge thing where people fight. It's just a bit more, like you said, a bit more of a like a fire to win.
Right.
Uh, you guys almost qualified, right? Didn't you guys get third last split?
Yeah, yeah, we came up just one game short against BBL Queens. Unfortunately, we probably should have beat them, but we
Yeah,
just,
Noya was rooting for you guys really hard. I think she's close friends with Amy on that team.
yeah.
And she was like, she kind of like almost forced me to watch that game. Not gonna lie. So I was like, I was it's kind of bummer. You guys, she really wanted you guys to win as well.
Yeah, it was good. We had a lot of growth just in the playoffs, and so it was super fun to like watch that happen. I don't know. For me as a coach, that's the most fun thing, is like when you see people like break the next barrier and like
Yeah,
level
totally.
up like in real time.
Yeah,
But
you
yeah,
guys came out of nowhere. Like I didn't expect you guys to be like favorites going into GC3. I like you guys made it further in G2. Like it's kind of crazy.
yeah. Well, put in the work. You put in
Good
the work.
job.
You
Good
get
job.
hungry. um, cool. Well, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about your specific team. Because I would imagine coming into the team, there was probably quite a bit of expectation, but now that you guys have like really kind of, shown, okay, well, we basically are like the next and potentially even better iteration of Cloud9 White, because obviously there's that association with Lexi and,
Yeah.
and Mel. Um, what is it like dealing with those expectations going into games? Because like at this point, if you guys lose a map, it's like a big deal. So
Yeah.
at least to like the outside world. I don't know if it is for you guys, but for the outside world, it's like, oh my god, they're losing a map. They're behind in a half. Like, how is this happening?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think it's people out on the outside see this much like a much bigger deal than we do. Like we
Mm,
lost a map to SR last GC, and we were like whatever, go next. Like it's fine. Like you can't like Boasters said it as well after like when they were like on this crazy run of Fnatic. They're like, you're gonna lose at some point. Like no
right.
matter how good you are, you're gonna have an off day. You're gonna have like we had crazy unfortunate circumstances in last GC3. We had no practice. We had like 5 days of practice with Noya. Even in GC2, we had no practice with her because she broke her arm. So like we spent, I think like 3 or 4 months playing with subs, like not straight up not playing, like
Hmm.
overall between both GCs. And that's gonna catch up to you no matter how talented your team is. If you're not practicing, you're not winning. Like that's that simple.
Right.
And we had like PC problems. We had already qualified, so like motivation wasn't that big. Like there's so many factors. Like we knew going into GC3 was gonna be rough, and as soon as we qualified for Brazil, we're like, all right, like let's win, but like if we don't, we know why.
Hmm.
That's kind of like the mindset we had. So like, I think it's almost a blessing we lost few games back in last GC because I think the pressure going to champs would have been too high otherwise. Like
Hmm.
if you've never lost a game all year and then you show up to LAN, something goes bad with your setup, someone has COVID, like whatever can happen, and like you lose a game, it really hurts your mental and like you start doubting yourself. I think it's much better we got out of the way in like a meaningless match
Hmm.
now. So in the grand scheme of thing, obviously I want to win everything. I wish we would have won, but I think if there was any game I wanted to lose is this one, because like
Yeah.
now we're going into like G champs with like a lot less pressure, and like you got to think like maybe it's not the same for Floor, Nicole, and Sarah. I think they're brand new to like winning in GC.
Right.
But for Lexi and Mel, I feel like for them winning GC at this point is more like a relief than actual like joy.
Hmm.
Like they have to win almost because they've won all of them, and like you don't. They get more hyped, and like they're more hungry in like a Knights monthly like last week. than they
Mm-hmm.
are in GC, because like they just been doing this for so long and they've won so many of them, and I think they're like in their head they're like ready for the next level. It's not like they take GC for granted. Obviously, we got reminded that we can't do that last one, but at the same time, like yeah, if the expectations are like for us, they're not that big. I think from the outside perspective, they looks much bigger. Like people think we lost a map and we're like quitting or like we're like not trying anymore. Or like that's it, we're done, we're washed. And like no, that's whatever. Like it's Valorant. You're gonna lose matches and maps sometimes. The game is a bit random.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, going into champs, that is the one thing that Mel and Lexi haven't won. And obviously that'll be the first big LAN experience for the other three players. So how do you go about kind of dealing with that pressure as a coach? I mean, obviously you were lucky enough to attend a LAN early on in Valorant, so you have a little bit of experience with what that's kind of like.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you kind of manage their expectations? Because I think they probably will come in as the favorites, either them or maybe the Brazilian team, I guess, on home soil. Um, what are you doing anything in particular like to prep them for this, or like
I I
what's your secret?
yeah, I think it was a year-long preparation. Like our goal in 2021 was to 2023, sorry, was it 2021? Was to like get ready for champs, because we, in my mind, when I started coaching and when I started seeing how fast we were improving and how good they were, there wasn't really much of a doubt that we were going to go to champs.
Hmm.
I feel maybe not as first seed, but I refused. Knowing how hard we try and how much more co-ed games we play and how much more practice we do, and just how straight up talented the team is. Leica was our manager. Like from the scratch, from the start, the goal was to go to champs. So like we prepared. Our preparation for champs actually started way earlier than now. Like we went to 2 lands this year. We were supposed to go to more lands, but then Nicole breaking her arm slash just being stuck in Europe, kind of like messed up our plans a little bit. We still attended 2 lands. One of them we won, GC land, Astral
Hmm.
Clash in Vegas, and we didn't do well at Philly. Like we played pretty bad in Philly, but we also played like really good teams in my opinion. So it was kind of hard, but we still have like this LAN experience,
Hmm.
and we boot camped twice this year. We're gonna boot camp once more before Brazil. So like just playing LANs, boot camping, and like people getting people ready to like do the content that's going to be required for a riot land is also important. So these are all things we did throughout the year, just so that we don't feel rushed right now.
Hmm.
Like we started prepping for this months ahead of time, so it's not like right now there's an extra pressure of like, oh frick, we need to go to a land now, we need to like do media like preparation, PR training, we need to like boot camp ASAP. It's like we've already done our boot camps, we've already done our lands, we already done PR training. Like everybody's like in a good mindset, and I think the team knows that if we just take practice seriously for the past week and the next like 4 or 5 weeks, we'll be fine. Like
Hmm.
we'll be fine. I'm sure we'll be fine. And if not, at least we'll have tried our best. Like we'll have done everything we can to be the best we can over there. So dealing with with this pressure is a year long work, like from me, from the team, from Leica, our manager. So like yeah, it's just there's nothing we can do in the moment now except practicing to like help us feel more prepared, because like I said, I think we're already quite prepared for it.
Cool. Well, I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, you can only do so much, and then you just kind of have to show up when it
Exactly, yeah.
matters. Yeah. Cool. So I wanted to ask a little bit more about specific players. I I don't want to ask you too much more about champs and stuff, just because obviously you can't give away too much, and there's probably not that much to be said at this point. I guess
Yeah.
last question maybe about champs is, how would you rate the other teams that are going at the moment? Where do you kind of see them as far as your competition goes?
It's really hard to say. I'm pretty bad. I don't know if it's just me or like for everybody, but I'm pretty bad when I look at other teams play from other regions to know if they're actually geniuses or like really bad.
Uh-huh.
Um, it seems like when you watch Valorant games and like both teams are like at a similar level, it's sometimes difficult to know if like who's really good or who's really bad. It's like I'm
Mhm.
having a rough time just scouting other teams and saying, "Oh, well, this team will be insane," or like this team will be bad. Like it's really hard for me. I think the most obvious choice for me, like teams that actually like is impressive and is looking really, really good is BBL.
Mhm.
I think BBL is looking like really strong. They have Vanya who's like dominating in the EU.
They've got some
Um,
crazy aimers, I will tell you that. That's the main thing they've
yeah,
got going for them is just
N-
aimers everywhere.
Nicole has warned me about the fact that the Turkish aim might be in full effect on that team. So like, yeah, they look really good. Um, but we also have crazy aimers on our team,
Right.
and I think we have like a good, like probably one of the best IGLs in GC, if not the best. If so, like I think we have like a great team overall, more than just aimers. So I'm still confident, but yeah, I think BBL is like probably the team we're looking out the most for. Obviously, G2 is like even if they didn't have the greatest season, at least not last GC, there's still a team that's like very dominant on LAN. They have Mimi, who's like a very experienced LAN player. Petra and Glenn's the same. Sarah and Roxy, not as much, I think, but like if there's still a threat. Like you can't just look past them because they had a rough GC3. They're still like a very big challenge. I think the two AMEA teams are like really strong. This East Asia team from Singapore, SMG, I think they're called, is looking unreal. They're like 34-0 or something. But that's also against I think what is like a weaker sort of like competition. I
Right.
think than NA at least. NA being the most inclusive GC scene, I think has like overall the most obviously the more inclusive you are, the more players there will be, so the more talent. I
Mhm.
think that's just math right there. Like you can't argue with that. So I think NA is pretty much probably what it's looking good for GC and NA. I think NAGC is looking good. So like we're not too worried about the rest of the regions. Like we just can't prepare that much. 'Cause it's really hard to tell if they're good or not. To be honest,
Right.
that's all it is. So we're not gonna take anyone lightly. And obviously, Team Liquid Brazil, like they're gonna be on home soil. For them, they're home, so that's a big advantage. You don't have to like this flight 12 hours to get there and
Right.
just get used to like new time zone and like everything there. So like I think Liquid, the two EME teams and the SMG are like the teams to look out for. But like I said, it's really difficult to say anything about the level because it's just like a different play styles, different teams. Like you said, like you have teams like BBL who have crazy aimers, and that's kind of hard to see in a VOD. Like unless you play against it. When you play against it, you like feel it more than when you watch it. I feel like.
Right. Yeah, totally makes sense. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your players then. Obviously, probably the two biggest names that everybody really knows at this point are Mel and Florescent.
Yeah.
And they're kind of on like complete opposite ends of the spectrum, I would
Yeah.
say, in terms of like what they do for the team and what their play style is. Although it is interesting because at one point during the chamber meta, Mel was kind of like the carry, like the main opper
She's a
for
chamber
Cloud9.
abuser.
Yeah. Washed actually after chamber there.
Washed.
But yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about Mel first. Like, what's it like working with her? Obviously, IGL coach relationship is like kind of an important part of any team, and like how you guys interface with the game and what you have decided is like what playbook and what sort of style you want to play. So how has it been working with Mel, who is one of the most experienced GC players, and then kind of like bouncing ideas off each other?
Mel and I have like a great relationship. Honestly, we work so well together. I feel like we both listen to each other quite well. Like I listen to what her feedback is from like some maps we're playing, some comps we're playing, and like if she feels uncomfortable playing a certain way, she'll tell me, and I'll also like she also listens to me quite well. Like when I want to play a certain way, she will listen and she will try her best to make it work. So we have like probably like one of the most healthy IGL coach relationship I've seen in my career. So we work really well together. She's like probably the most hardworking IGL I've ever seen throughout any team. Um, she like we just lost a game yesterday against Turtle Troop, which is like a kind of like a good unsigned team in
Right.
semifinals of nights. And like like we spent the entire week practicing. So we started like all the way back to last Sunday practicing, doing VOD review, and then we play all week. We practice all week. We play a tournament all weekend, and like some of these maps went to like 7 overtimes. Like it was a really long weekend, and we lose that game yesterday. And like we're like, okay, well, nice try. Like we made it far, blah blah blah. Like everybody goes their own way because everybody's tired, everybody's like exhausted from this tournament practice. And Mel asks for my VOD. She rewatches her own VOD back. She watches my VOD, and then she probably watches the broadcast VOD after that. And she's like rewatching all these rounds and thinking about all we could have done different and everything. And she's just a freak for like watching Valorant and trying to get better, which is incredible to work with. Like she I don't know if she'll ever be in tier 1 or whatever. I don't know what the future holds, but if somebody deserves it, it's her, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's so hardworking, and she's a bit like me in the sense, like, earlier I was talking about like how I show up to practice with energy every day and like how I'm very consistent in my moods and everything. Well, Mel is just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Mel is just like, she rarely has a day where she's on and she's like, can you guys help me bring the energy up because I'm not feeling it today? And she's doing it to a much higher extent than I was. Like I said, I'm not like a super hyped person in nature, but I'm consistent in my energy, but I'm not like yelling and screaming shit. But she's doing all of that while being super hyped and super hyperactive, which is like crazy to see. And it's probably really draining for her, but she still does it. So I have a lot of respect for Mel. I think Mel is like a very deserving player. I know she's like the face of GC and everything, and like a lot of GC stuff revolves around her, and I think she's totally deserving of it. She works harder than any other player I've worked with. So like, it's great working with her. I really like working with her. Obviously, there's still a gap between her and like the most experienced IGLs, like overall in the co-ed scene.
Mm-hmm.
That's like she's a really hard worker, and I'm sure she'll get there someday. But you could tell when I came in on the team that she like, it's kind of funny because like in co-ed teams, like you'll always like new players come into like new team, like old teams, or like these teams have vets as like veteran players, and they'll teach the like new players how to play the game, and then these new players will eventually be the vets, and it's like a
Right.
cycle like that. But in GC, there was no vet player. Like there was no player that like had lifted a co-ed trophy or anything. There was no one. So her and like Lexi and all like the old C9 White roster had to learn everything by themselves, kind of. There was no one to show them anything. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously all the like main coaches, like the best coaches, are all going to like franchise and challengers and stuff like that. So it's really hard for them to find someone who was going to help them like just improve on like the basic TAC FPS stuff. And I think she came a long way by herself, and like obviously the C9 White coaching staff. But like it's hard for GC to improve because there is not that cycle is not there yet of like
Right.
these new players coming in, and like you have like Zekken joining Exa, and like he's got Def showing him stuff, and he's like got this coach that's been there for a long time, and now Zekken's the vet, and like he's bringing new players in, and like like this cycle that like just repeats itself over and over, like just as an example.
Right, and that
And
even stretches back to like the Counter Strike games too.
yeah,
For
exactly,
most of
yeah,
the men's team, like obviously there is like a women's team in Counter Strike, but nothing like it is in Valorant. And so like the
yeah.
experience gap is massive as far as tech FPS goes
Yeah,
for the general
I think
population.
so. And it's just experience, really. It's just like having played for a long time, having seen every scenario possible, knowing how to react, knowing to like, communicate, and just all these things. Just it's hard for her because she doesn't have that background, and like I know if she keeps working, she'll get there, but it's still frustrating for her because like she puts in a lot of effort, and sometimes it's not always rewarded because like it's just that experience gap between her and like the other players that have been there for like so long.
Right, makes sense. Um, Before we talk about Florescent, I kind of wanted to ask what you see as being like the most important thing for like prospective GC players to work on. Like what's sort of like the main mistake that you find yourself having to correct a lot or that you see them making consistently?
This is so easy. It's the easiest answer ever. It's they just so dialed on getting clips and aim and one digs and buying guardians and getting 5 guardians one tap and being praised for their mechanics, when this game is not about that at all. This game is
Interesting.
only Twitter cares about your clips. Literally no good player cares. Literally not a single tier 1 player cares about your clips. Like literally no one. All people care about. No, I think I'm being for real. I think I'm like, when I joined my team, this was the biggest pet peeve I have. I'm like, you guys got to start reloading your guns and start going for one taps and like buy phantoms and start spraying smokes and literally just crouch spray, buy Odins and spray the walls. buy fucking Buckies. Oh, sorry, I swear, I'm
That's
very
fun.
tilted about
It's
this.
fun.
Buy Buckies and Judges and sit in corners, like abuse the game. Buy Stinger, run and gun, like just stop going for like these clips and all these one taps and like just play the game as it's how it's supposed to be played. And like
Hmm.
so that was the first thing I was like very adamant on, and like you guys gotta stop going for clips and stuff like that, because that's just not how the game is played. And then the second is probably communication. I feel like that was like the biggest thing, and it's still the biggest issue for our team. So I'm assuming it's the biggest thing for every GC team, because I've been really hard on that for the past year. It's that people are like very hesitant to like do good comms, and I want to see good comms. I mean, not only like whispering, "Oh, there's someone here." It's more about like, "Yo, like there's someone here. Like, can you dart from me? Can you flash with it? Okay, like can you get ready to spam? I'm gonna dart. Like, can you smoke here? Can you recall a star here?" Like, just these very active comms
Right.
and these very
Being
like
proactive with
being
like the
proactive.
planning. Yeah.
Exactly, is like something that was only existent with Mel. I think all the other four players on my team were like really bad at that,
Hmm.
and we spent all of our energy working on it and like being proactive and like doing just basic teamwork. So these are the two things that were like very lacking for me. And like if you're a GC player that's trying to make it into like the better GC teams, I'm tempted to say like just stop worrying about your aim, start queuing 15 DMs a day and just watch VODs and watch comms video from pro teams and see how they communicate, instead of like doing all these aim labs, Kovac routines and stuff like that. Just like watch like any comms video from any teams like Fnatic, 100 Thieves, like a bunch of the NRG, like a bunch of them post them. Or you
Hmm.
just watch that and see how assertive players like Victor, Ethan, like all these players like very vocal. Like just pay attention to how assertive they are and like how proactive they are in their comms, and that'll make you like a 10 times better player than any DM can.
That makes sense. Yeah, one of my biggest pet peeves for every team that I've ever worked with is people asking, "Can we do this?
Oh,
Can you flash for me?" Then it's like, "Yes, I can." Okay, do it now. It's like, no, just tell me, flash for me. I'm peeking. Like, just
no,
say
this
what you want to happen.
we still no, you're so right. We still do this so much, and I stop paying attention to it sometimes, and sometimes I'll like snap back to it. I'm like, oh frick, we're still asking, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do like stop asking questions, make
Yep.
statements. It's like
Yep.
pretty normal for like high tier players that have been playing for a long time, but if you're a new player, having the confidence to do that is like sometimes it's hard to get kind of.
Right. Yeah. Especially, I would imagine asking maybe like a more experienced player to put their gun away to use utility for you is a little
Yeah,
intimidating sometimes, for sure.
yeah, I agree.
That makes sense. Okay, well, speaking of confidence, let's talk about Florescent, who seems to have maybe some of the most dumb confidence I've ever seen in any player. As far
She's
as
so
just
funny. She is so funny.
every duel, let's go.
No, no, she plays like this against everyone, by the way. She doesn't do it only in GC. She
Right.
does not care. She has no care in the world. She's so funny to watch play. I don't really have to watch her play because she's a duelist, and I can't really help her play duelist. Like I can help any other role. Like I can help sentinel players, I can help controllers. Like I'm really good with util. But like I've never played duelist. Like it's hard for me to tell her sometimes like go for this duel, but don't go for this one. I feel like to get the best out of her, I had to kind of let her do her thing
Mhm.
and allow her to almost int up to a certain level. Because I feel like I didn't want to like, put a leash on her and be like, no, don't do this. Play very like disciplined stuff. The other four have to play disciplined, but Floor is in a bit of a world of her own, and I let her do a lot of stuff that I don't let the others get away with, because I know that's her playstyle. Like I said, I respect it.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's too crazy, and I do have to like reel her back in and like, yo, like come on, you're smarter than this, like this doesn't make sense. But like a lot of the times I kind of let her do her thing, and I spend my entire day watching her, and it's just so funny the stuff she does. She is so dumb sometimes, but she's so smart at the same time. It's crazy. Like
Right.
she's gifted. She truly is a gifted player, and she has what it takes to make it up to the biggest leagues in the world. I have no doubt. She's the most talented player I've ever seen, I think. But she still has a long way to go as far as like motivation and like work ethic and like all these things.
Right. She's
Um,
only
she
18,
turned 17
17. Wow. Okay.
like recently. not too long ago, not recently, but not too long ago. So she's still got I like 9 or 8 months until she's like old enough to play in like franchise and stuff like that. And I
Mhm.
think she's still not there yet, like as far as comms wise, as far as like discipline, work ethic, and all these things. But she has improved on those drastically throughout the year. I was really hard on her when I first joined the team. Like obviously, like, it's so hard to tell these teams from an outside perspective because like all you see are the flashy plays and like the stat line at the end of the game, and like. But early on, she was like a very quiet player. She was barely speaking. Like act like it was like not only action comms were missing, like everything was missing. She wasn't saying a
Right.
word basically. Like she was very very quiet. But she I she listened to me a lot, and she listens to Mel a lot, and she respects us, even though she knows she's quite talented and she's like really really good at the game. And she's not only mechanically gifted, like you have to understand, she's really really smart about the duels she take and the
Right.
util. She looks great on duelist, but she would be an incredible everything player. Like she'd be an insane breach, she'd be an insane Sova, she'd be an insane everything. Our util usage, I would never have to correct her on it almost.
Hmm.
Except for raise ult. Sometimes she doesn't raise ult for some reason. I don't know why, but like I think she's afraid of missing it. I don't know. But like our util is top tier, and like I said, she's really smart about the game. Not only about duelist and peeking, but she's not a brain dead duelist. She may seem like that, but I've seen her play other agents, and she has Valorant kind of in her. Like she knows what to
Mm-hmm.
do at almost any moment. And the frustrating part of coaching her is knowing that she knows what to do at all times and just being a bit too lazy to say it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the annoying part because she almost always knows what to do. Like almost. Like she has the right reactions, she has the right reads, she has like clean util, she has insane aim, but she sometimes gets lazy with it, and like she doesn't go to like the full extent of what she's capable to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally, totally. I mean, sometimes when you're so good at something, it becomes very easy to just rely on your skill.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a problem she has, and I feel like as she keeps playing and she plays in like higher leagues than GC, I think that could correct itself. I don't know. But for the moment, something we're really working hard on, her and me and Mel, and being like trying to bring the best out of her in every day. And she's improved so much though on that. Like it's hard to ask for more because she's already stepped it up big time in that sense. Like she not only carries through stats and kills, but she's also able to carry through like mid rounding and like planning a post plan and like planning a retake and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see someone that good at like everything, if that makes sense. But yeah, she
Yeah.
just
Sounds
needs
like
to be
kind
a
of
little bit
like
more.
another Zekken almost, like one of these players that just like intuits the game like so
Exactly.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She can play any role. Like obviously we have her playing duelist because why would we not do that? Like I would
Right.
get crucified if I had her on anything else than duelist.
Put
I
her
would
on
literally
smokes
get
like Demon One, right?
yeah, exactly. Like I would get killed if I did that. But there's no doubt in my mind that she could do it. And to bring out the best in her, like obviously on this team that's got already like great supportive players, there's no sense in putting her on anything else than duelist. But yeah, she's definitely got that game intuition that is lacking in a lot of other players. Not on
Mhm.
my team, but like on teams in general. Like she's got it. Like she understands Valorant. It's
Right.
just that simple.
Makes sense. Yeah, I was gonna ask what it's like coaching somebody who's so like kind of free flowing like that. Like how, at what point do you put the leash on them? Because that's something that I've struggled with for sure as well. Working with some super talented players, like coaching somebody like Ferbsa. I don't know if you know Ferbsa.
Yeah, Fribs is
Um,
crazy.
and he's one of those players too where he'll just be, you know, he's like, I'm just gonna do this round. It's like, oh god, that's such a bad idea, and then it just works because he's so
Yeah, she
good.
does the same. She does the same. She literally does the same exact thing.
Yeah, but it's like at some point, I kind of feel like in this game, at least this is my interpretation, is that with the duelist role, it's like a very, very delicate balance between being completely idiotic and being insanely good.
Yep.
And like most of it just comes down to like pure intuition in the moment. You have to react perfectly. And if you tell them to like stop doing things, a lot of times then it kind of like freezes their intuition because they're thinking too much about what they're doing. And you have to just kind of
Yep.
allow them to win you a lot of rounds by themselves, but then occasionally throw rounds and just like accept that the damage is going to come with like the rewards to some extent.
Yeah, you're completely right. I 100% share that point of view, and it's something that I knew going in because I've been playing Valorant for a long time, and I've played with many talented duelists. Zalsis is prime example. He's
Mhm.
gonna win you 5 rounds in a row doing crazy shit, and he's gonna toss you the most untossable round ever,
Yeah.
running down mid on an eco and just lose his Vandal like off rip, and you're
Right.
like, why? But like he's just bringing you so many rounds that you just allow it.
Right.
And Floor is the same, and it wasn't hard for me to understand that. I feel like I knew that coming in.
Mhm.
It's hard to make the other players kind of like understand that, if anything,
Yeah, that
because
makes
like
sense.
you have these other players, like they see that you're way more strict on them as far as inting goes than you are on her, and it's like a hard balance of being like, yo, like I know she's allowed to do this, but you're not. Like you're definitely not allowed to do this. Like never do this again. And it's kind of like unfair because
Right.
like it's supposed to be a team game and everybody's supposed to be held to the same standard. But at the same time, it's like, I have to tell Mel sometime, like, yo, like, let her do her thing, like, she's winning you a lot of rounds. Like, we have to, like, enable it and not disable it. Obviously,
Right.
like you said, there's this balance, and, like, at some point it gets too dumb, and you have to step in and be like, yo, that was kind of really stupid. Don't do that ever again. But
Right.
it's a balance, like you said. You said it quite well. It's literally just a balance and making sure that everybody on the team is on board with this. It will be unfair. It will be unfair, but that's how we're gonna get better.
Right. Yeah. You just kind of have to tell them it's like, okay, well, with her on the team, we only need to win 9 rounds per map as opposed to 12 or 13, right? So just allow this to happen.
Sometimes, yeah.
The net is +4 on average, so we'll just kind of go with
Yeah. As long as
that.
she doesn't lose 4 other rounds on her own.
Right.
Sometimes she'll win us 5, she'll lose a 3, we'll still +2, so like
That's
we're
good.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good. We're
Exactly.
good.
Exactly. And then I guess one last question about playing with Floor is how do you even like go about building a playbook with somebody that's like this? Because like I don't know how you are as a coach or how Mel is as far as calling, but I feel like you guys are relatively structured, and then having somebody who's kind of allowed to flow within that structure has got to be a little bit challenging as far as like how you game plan. And obviously don't give away too much, but
No, no, I don't mind sharing because I feel like our playstyle is like I'm happy you said it looks structured because we're actually not structured that much, and that was a big thing that I had to work on. And it comes back to what I was saying earlier a bit, where like you come in and you try to like be a coach for like a top franchise team, and like at first I came in with all these crazy ideas for comms and like different strats and like different ways to play certain maps that I had in mind previously from my other team that I didn't try. And I tried implementing it, and like after 2 weeks, I was like, okay, this is never gonna work. Like we're just not there yet. There's no point. So I kind of like reverted back to like playing the most standard basic rank Valorant ever. We don't have many set strats. We don't have crazy setups or crazy innovative ideas. The approach we have is very straightforward. It's more like just be better at all the basic things,
Mhm.
and that will be enough to win GC. Like at some point, once we like reach like a point where like all our fundamentals are really high, we'll have to like transition into like more of these crazy ideas and stuff like that. But for the level we're at right now, where we're still losing to unsigned teams in like co-ed tournaments, we're
Mhm.
still losing maps to pugs sometimes. Like pugs are like good radiant players and like stuff like that. It's still showing that we have a way to go before we can be so structured and like so different than any other team. So our game plan is to mainly work on communication, basic teamwork ideas. Like we have a lot of protocols for each map though. Like that's maybe where the structure looks like it's coming from. We spend all like half the hours we spend scrimming, we spend VOD reviewing almost. We
Mhm.
spend like at least 2 hours a day VOD reviewing. And this is where I think, and I think Josh RT, when he came to your podcast, made a great, probably one of the best coach statement that I've heard about Valorant is like VOD reviewing is not necessarily good to fix mistakes. It's where you like agree on a certain way to play as a team.
Mhm.
It's like where you discuss these like gray areas, because certain things in like Valorant are like black and white. Like some plays are dumb, some plays are smart, and you can show that to like any players, like any good players, and they'll tell you, yeah, that was dumb, yeah, like,
Mhm.
and that was smart. But there's these players that are like in between, and just everybody has to be on the same page on what to do when that happens. And this can only be done through VOD review, I feel like.
Right.
And for especially for teams where players are like not that experienced, and yeah. And so we spend a lot. I value this a lot, and this is where we spend most of our efforts in. So we have a lot of protocols that are derived from VOD review, and this is where the structured part of our gameplay comes from. But in reality, we're not a very Google Doc heavy team. Like we have a few strats and map. And in general, I just try and make sure that Mel is the best IGL she can be, and she understands the comps, she understands rotations on maps, she understands ult usage and stuff like that. But aside from that, I kind of let her do her own thing.
Hmm.
I give her like 2 or 3 defaults. I give her like spreads on defense. I give her like 2 set strats. I give her pistols and taikos and stuff like that. But once they're in the game, we're not in like a super structured environment. So it's easy for Floor to like do her own thing because like we're playing like that in practice, like organically, like just making plays in the round depending on what happens.
Okay,
So
that makes
it's
sense.
yeah, it's kind of easy actually.
Sure, yeah, and that seems like a pretty solid approach just for Valorant in general. I'm still kind of like on the fence about um how much I think like playbooking is important in this game,
Yes.
and like because I come back from like a MOBA background, and
Yeah.
so like Dota, and so I'm really like deep in like the theory crafting of like agent combos and utility usage and that type of stuff. And I feel like a team like Paper X, for example, is like a great example of like a MOBA-esque team, which is funny because they have a lot of like CS players, but the way that
Yeah.
they're like, okay, well, this agent has this kit and this agent has this kit. So if we just kind of put them together on the map, then they can do these cool things. And then it doesn't really matter what the play call is. They'll just do those cool things to like accomplish, X task. And
Yeah.
so I really like that kind of idea of thinking about the game, but that's really hard to work into a game plan if you're like, okay, here's stage one of the default, and then once we have like a main control, then we can rotate over here and then use this piece of utility to trigger this reaction, and then we go to
Yeah.
stage two. It's like it doesn't really fit in my opinion about how a lot of people play Valorant. And maybe it's just because people are kind of bad at Valorant and they just kind of like do random stuff a lot, but also the game kind of like rewards you for doing that. So it's like really hard to figure out exactly what the best play style is.
You're completely right. And like teams like PureX are so cool that they exist. It's really
Yeah.
cool that they exist, but at the same time, I don't even try and replicate what they do because it feels like it requires everybody to be such on the same page and such and being such on like a different planet of Valorant that like it's just I see the vision when I see their plays, and I'm thinking there's no way this works for my team. Like there's just no way this works for any other team actually. So
Right.
I'm glad they exist, and I also hate them because I'm a bit jealous. Like it looks really cool, and like you look at Alex, their coach, he looks like a genius most of the time. Like the way they do things, it's crazy. I respect it so much, but it's so hard to implement, and you need your players to already be such good players before you can afford to do that as a coach.
Right.
Then I think for a team like ours, like the team you just coached and the team I'm coaching, the risk reward is not just it's just not there because you can teach them how to do basic things and see drastic improvement over teaching them how to do like these crazy plays and maybe seeing like improvement but not guaranteed. I feel like
Mhm.
it's just not worth it to implement that play style, but it's really cool to see that as a Valorant coach or a Valorant player. And I don't know how that relates to Dota, but Dota is a crazy game. I I watch the international. I'm a big fan of like all the like the documentaries that Valve releases every year, and like I watch them 20 times. Like I'm a big Seb fan, but
Right.
well before he got very toxic, but like still his approach to the game and everything is so cool. And I don't know, is Dota like is the Dota the same? Do you need like crazy game plans and 70 pages of like strat books? It seems like the draft is everything in Dota, but I don't know. I don't understand the game.
Yeah, I mean, I never got super deep into like the team coaching side of Dota. I was mostly like a content creator in that game as well,
Mm,
and just doing like analysis of what people were doing. But
yeah.
to me, it was kind of a similar thing where it's like I'm sure that there were some teams that were like, okay, at this timing we need to go do this, and then at
Mm,
this time we have to go do this. But for the most part, I think a lot of it was just kind of like, okay, this draft is cool because these like 5 heroes have this synergy of
Yeah.
these synergies together, and then as long as they're kind of like playing together to some extent, like that is like powerful enough to win the game in a lot of cases.
Okay.
um but I do think that that sort of like MOBA mindset of like, hero combos and just kind of like being open to like abusing the mechanics that the game gives you, because that's another thing about Dota that a lot of other games don't have, which is that they patch it constantly. And so like
Yeah.
new heroes are broken every couple of months, and then you have to like figure out like what is the most broken thing that you can do. And you're basically like constantly trying to break the game, which you were
That's
saying about
funny.
Valorant, it's like people like refuse to use the broken stuff in this game, like the Judge, the
Yeah.
Odin, like
Yeah.
these guns
No,
are
I agree.
insanely broken, and if you're not using them, like you're leaving a huge amount of value on the table. But
I
people like
feel you.
have the ego of like, oh, I need to get my headshots instead of like spraying 3 people through smokes with an Odin every round.
Disgusting. Disgusting behavior. You're disgusting.
But it's better when you do that, like
Yeah.
when
It's
I first
easier.
started seeing people do, like the fade C's raise combo, the nade combo,
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, it's
Yeah.
like a little bit of MOBA, like give me more of this. Like I want to see
No,
these
this
types
meta
of
was
things.
cool. This meta was cool. It sucked because it did mean that people played Chamber on every map.
Right.
But overall, if it wasn't from Chamber, this meta would have been really nice. I like the Breach, the Fade, the Raze, all such cool agents. I liked it.
Yeah. There was a lot of like cool synergies that were going on, and
Yeah.
even like the Astra pull with like off of, some Killjoy or Chamber utility into like some other piece of utility, with like the stun pulls you into the middle of the Astra Star.
And then you can't jump out of it because you're stunned. And then like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, there's a lot of cool things. I agree. I think the same way. I think this is I like the broken things in the Valorant. I don't mind them at all.
Yeah. It's just it's a feature, not a bug, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
Cool, man. Well, I guess the last couple of questions that I have for you, for I don't want to take too much of your time before I let you go, are like, what is your perspective on the GC players taking that next step into the VCL or VCT? Do you think it's something where it's going to be like 1 or 2 players might make it in the next couple of years? Do you think it's going to be a team that just like really kind of dominates and builds this chemistry together and maybe makes a jump through like the premier qualification into VCL? Or what's sort of your perspective? I'm sure it's probably changed since you became part of the GC scene. Like, where do you see it going from here?
I think it's really hard to answer. I think teams currently, GC teams, are playing more co-head events than before,
Hmm.
but not nearly as much as they should. I still feel like we're probably the team that plays it the more, and that's kind of bad because we're supposed to be like one of the top teams, and I feel like teams should like follow in our footsteps. Like
Hmm.
you rarely see teams like SR, Complexity, EG, like FlyQuest. Like you never see these teams play in the Knights Monthly, or like very rarely. And I don't mind exposing them for saying it because I think that's bad. I think that's how you get the best practice.
Hmm.
And I think we still have a long way to go before we see any team make it into like and like full GC team make it into like challengers. I'm gonna tell you, I don't know. I'm not going into Chems thinking we'll win this whole thing. I have no idea. I think that is on us to do, and that's on us to work hard to make sure that our skills floor is really high. So even if we have off days in Brazil, we'll still show up and be decent, which is not what we were in GC3 at all.
Hmm.
So I'm not showing up to Brazil thinking we're the best team over there by any mean. Like I don't want to repeat the C9 White experience that Mel and Lexi had to go through, where like they're coming in like big egos and thinking that's gonna be free. I don't think anything is free in Valorant ever. Valorant is a hard game.
Hmm.
But if there's a team that will make it through challengers, it's us. It's gonna be us. Like I'm 100% confident that against co-ed teams, we are the best GC team that's ever existed straight up
Hmm.
across the world. I will say that confidently. Now that doesn't mean that we're the best GC team. I feel like this just two different things, and like the GC teams play a different. We started screaming GC teams because we want to get used to getting reps against teams that play like that, and it's just very different from the level we play uh like when we play co-ed events, and it's on us to be able to like play against all these types of playstyle and like be consistent across it. and that requires a lot of hard work, and it requires like us to be humble and be like, yeah, we know we're better, but if they beat us at the end of the day, we look bad and we still lose the game and we lose the tournament, you know. So we pay a lot of like we're getting ready to play like a GC tournament, which means that we'll see things that we don't normally see in like our other games. Like GC teams are really good at like all or nothing. They'll either like run it down Google Doc set strat and like be in your face at like 1 minute 35, or they'll do nothing and just sit in corners and wait forever, a bit like Xset was playing. And it's like kind of like weird to play against that because that's not how most teams play sometimes. So there's like an adjustment on us to make there to make sure that we're the best GC team. But aside from that, I think like just the sheer result we have in co-ed, we're definitely the better GC team in co-ed. Like I have no doubt in my mind. So if there's a team that will do it, it will be us. But aside from that, I don't think there's any other team currently that can do it. And it's not because they're not good enough or like they're not. It's just because they don't play them. They just don't have these reps in matches against these better teams. That's all it is. But I think so. If there's a team that does it, it's gonna be us. But if we don't do it, then I'm convinced that players like Floor, Mel, all the players on my team could eventually end up playing in challengers if we keep grinding hard enough. There's no doubt. So I don't think we'll see another team than us make that step for a long time. At least not this year, because people are just not grinded co-ed hard enough. But if we see it this year, it's gonna be us. Otherwise, it's gonna be one of our players. I think players like Floor are already in the scope of quite a few challengers teams. Maybe even franchise in some of the regions. So like I think she has the potential to do it. People are seeing it. IGLs that are really like highly sought after. So that gives Mel a lot of chance. Yeah, so I think it's either us as a team or members of our team. I don't think it's
Gotcha.
gonna be anything else.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can't really argue with that based on the results. Like, I mean, it is really interesting though how like EMEA teams don't really seem to play co-ed stuff. I mean, there really isn't a lot of co-ed stuff to play
I
in
was
'cause
gonna
it's all like
say,
region
yeah.
locked, I think, for the
I'm
most
not
part.
sure if I can blame them because I don't know how the EMEA system works.
Right.
I can flame the NA teams for not doing it because there's open circuit out there. There's Knights Monthly. There was NSG Lockdown.
Right.
There's like Mr. Fun Haver Invitational currently happening. Like
Right.
you see more. What's cool though is you see a lot of GC players now make pugs with like co-ed players, which is cool. Like you saw like Unstable this weekend, like this GSG play duelist played with like a pug that made it really far in this night's monthly. Dota, the FlyQuest player, also made a pug with like, so that's cool. So that's gonna eventually pay dividends for them. I think all these players that go out of their way to play these tournaments. I know Lacey sub for Thrill Troop as well. It's like all these players that go out of their way to actually play these tournaments will be rewarded at some point. I have no doubt because they have the talent. It's just getting in the right mindset. But yeah, in Europe, I have no clue how it works. So maybe you coach Ascent, so maybe you can
I
tell
don't
me
know
how
what's
it
going on over
goes.
there. There's like
Yeah,
500 leagues for different
there's
countries
500.
and
Yeah, I feel
nobody
like
can
it.
play across the league. So yeah, don't ask me. I'm less informed than you are and you know nothing. So
So yeah, so I like I said, maybe for other regions, I can't say how hard it is because, like I said, I don't know if they have these tournaments they can sign in for fun on the weekend and just play in them.
Right.
So maybe they're not playing them because they can't. So I can't flame them. I can only flame the NA players.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, the last question I have for you then about this is just kind of like you keep mentioning how important it is to play against co-ed teams for GC teams. And I'm just kind of curious, like, what is it exactly that makes such a difference? I mean, is it just like the players are all just better aimers? They're just all more proactive. They just have more tack shooter experience. Like what makes it better practice? And why is it that even just these like Radiant Pug teams give like a full GC team that's been practicing for, 6 months problems?
It's a good question. I think overall, like saying anything other than like these teams are most of the time just better, it like would be like kind of wrong. Like, because I think the talent pool obviously in the like throughout of like all the Valorant players is much higher than just GC because there's just so many more players. Like there's just
Right.
millions of players, and then GC probably has like a few. tens of thousands, not even. So like
Yeah.
it's hard to like get this talent pool to make a very talented team that can compete with these millions of players. That's always going to be a challenge, I feel like. But what it like I said, it's just a lack of experience. I feel like makes it so hard for these teams, and like the lack of good coaching, the lack of just having someone who knows what they're doing. Like even on these pugs that like you'll always have a player that like been around for a long time, or like someone will have played with a player like that, and it's just like easy to like get experience from outside.
Mhm.
Uh, and there's also like their grind mindset. I think it's harder for GC players to grind rank and stuff like that because it's I still feel like they're getting harassed a lot, and like there's still a lot of like bad things happening to them. So I can understand why a lot of GC players don't grind ranked as much as like all these other kids do.
Mhm.
Um, that's something that I try to force my team to do. Like I was always really critic about that, and I was like, listen, I know it's not easy for you guys because sometimes you might get absolute assholes in your games, and like I'm sorry, but still, if you want to get better at Valorant, you're gonna have to play Valorant. So like I have players that like play a lot of rank, and
Mhm.
that is very helpful in the end. Like I know people complain about ranked all the time, and it is quite often a dog shit environment. I feel like it's not like very realistic Valorant, but it's still better than not playing. And that's something that I was really hard on, and I was like, listen, like play rank. I'm sorry, but like if we're still losing to like you said, Radiant bugs, it still means that we have a long way to go individually, and like as far as like how each of you understand the game on an individual level, because we're losing to bugs that have no practice. So like
Right.
our practice is not the problem, our strats are not the problem. The problem is like how we are as individuals
And like
more than
confidence
anything.
probably
Like
is a big
confidence,
thing. Yeah.
exactly. And like playing rank against these better players all the time will just make you better players. I'm sorry, like that's just the truth of it. And like players that don't grind rank are very rare. Like top tier players, like you have most of the top tier players are still rank grinders. Like whether we like it or not, whether we agree with the system or we agree with rank itself, it's still a
Right.
great way to improve. And I feel like a lot of GC players, I don't know if they just don't play because harassment issues or like they just don't like it or whatever, but I know that when my players grind rank, they are better.
Mhm. That makes sense. That makes sense. Cool. Well, that's really all I have for you as far as questions go. I guess I'll just kind of like open up the floor to you if you want to plug anything or like say any last words or any advice to players out there or like yeah, anybody like anything
I
you
think
want to say.
I give enough of advice already. I feel like
Sure.
I don't want to make my job too hard as well, so I'm just gonna stop it there as far as advices go. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me. I think that was my first time ever going to podcast, and I'm sorry, I'm quite talkative, so I'm
No, it's
sorry
good.
if I.
It's good quality to have in a podcast guest. You don't want to be
Thank you,
dragging information out of people.
thank you. But yeah, so thank you for having me, and obviously for everybody watching, we're going to Brazil in a few months. Not a few months, a few weeks, sorry. So just make sure to like check it out, and check out the GC games. Like, I think it's a great way to support the scene, and like, it, there's still like I know it's not franchise, but there's still like a lot of good games, and you can still the drama in GC is insane. So just for that, it's worth tuning in.
Yeah, it
Um,
might not be the most perfect Valorant you've ever watched, but holy
it's
shit,
funny.
is
It's funny.
GC entertaining to
It's
watch.
so great. I don't know. I didn't follow GC before I joined the GC team, honestly, but I don't know how I missed out on so much. It's so fun.
Yeah,
But yeah, so make sure you just support V1 there, and like thank you for all my teammates for helping me be the coach that I am. Thank you.
awesome. Well, we'll end it there, and I'll put links to your socials and stuff down below in the description.
Cool.
So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.